Timeless, the human experience through a quantum lens. Hello and welcome to the final episode in Series 1 of Timeless, a podcast with me, Isabel Soden.
And myself, Clive Hyland.
So to finish this series, we are looking at the way forward. But before we go there, let's recap. Where have we been in this great odyssey? We started with the science of quantum, looking at physics and neuroscience in particular, and then we went up in our spaceship and looked at the universe through a quantum lens, and then we came right back down. Did we descend in a spaceship or some other sort of...
Well, spaceship will do for now.
Okay, great. Yeah. Looking at implications on organizations. And finally, we've arrived here to look at where we're going and how to move forward with this thinking.
And I guess the dominant factor that influences that future for me, in my mind, is AI. Because it's going to have such a huge impact on the environment that we face. Organizations are already seeing major changes coming about, and that is going to accelerate, not slow down. So this is not a nice to have philosophical debate. This is a what are we going to do about it debate.
All right, so what are we going to do about it?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Okay, so it's basically the question, why have we bothered with these conversations? And the fundamental message is because we have to change our thinking. So hence the phrase quantum thinking. So what the hell is quantum thinking? We touched on it before, but to reinforce it is really about learning to use all of our brains and not be preoccupied with what is effectively rational processing and our preoccupation with what we do and behavior and results. And is to equally explore the other parts of the brain which bring us things like, instinctive, safety, emotional connection, imagination, all other things that can't be handed over to AI. So AI is a reality, and I think it's good to embrace it, but to do so from a point of view of understanding and having thought through the implications for the future. Okay? So the context for me is, it will change the rules of competitive activity in the business world, certainly, and it'll change the rules of how we make sense of human life. Yeah. So it's to look at that in a positive way and sort of say, okay, the key point for us to understand is that the environment that we've built is one that's being co-created by us and is therefore not an independent reality, which means it can be changed. Mm-hmm. It's not something we're stuck with. It's just the way that we have learned through evolution to experience the universe. These icons that allow us to interface to the real existence of the quantum realm. Mm-hmm. And there's this curious irony, isn't there? Because people's automatic reaction be, well, what the hell is it called? Quantum realm, which we've tried to explain. But apparently it's the unexplained that's the most real thing that we're dealing with here. So everything else is up for grabs. Now, we can't say at the moment exactly.
Oh, could you say that again?
Yeah. So I'm saying everything else is up for grab because there's this irony around, we think we've dealt with reality in what we're experiencing now in terms of matter. And there's this weird stuff out there which is called quantum energy, right? More likely to be the truth is that the reality is the quantum world, and we have constructed an illusion which is the world of matter. Okay. Takes a bit of head getting around, right? Does that sit okay?
It does. It actually made me breathe a sigh of relief.
Okay, cool.
I don't even want to know why. But
so something connected, yeah?
Yes.
A new thought pattern that worked for you.
Mm-hmm.
So basically it's saying, look, that doesn't mean to say we're all crazy and, we've mismanaged the world that's out there. It's saying that's what we learned, but we're saying to be stuck in that particular view of the world and our environment is going to cause us to miss major opportunities for growth and the survival of our species, right? So it's about, all right, so what is the relearning and, in fact, the unlearning that we have to do, getting rid of all the assumptions and biases and the limitations of our belief systems, which only allow us to see the world in a particular way.
Yeah.
So quantum thinking is all about allowing our brains to flow, allowing imagination to work, enabling the brain time to spot new creative patterns by which we can understand our experience and the world that sits beyond it. So we can then interface with it in different ways. And the belief that it's a bit like ripples going out in the pool, that's a nice representation of the way the energy works. It doesn't work in a straight line. It's about ripples. And by creating those ripples of new thought, we will create new connections. And frankly, we don't know where that's going to take us. But all of that represents new potential that we have not yet locked into.
And is that as simple as giving our brains a bit more space?
Yes, it is. But to do that, what we've got to recognize is that we've got to unlearn all our, I'm not saying stop doing them, but realize the limitations of our current thinking patterns. And the preoccupations of the way we see things now. In brain terms, what that means is we have a load of neural circuits that cause our brains to operate in a certain way. All right. Now, unless we do some rethinking, they'll carry on working that way and we'll end up in the same place.
Yeah.
And that's what we're finding, right? Just little relatable examples. You listen to 60s music, for an example, which I would do. They are calling for the same things there that we are trying to call for now. Okay, but nothing has changed in 60 years, fundamentally. So it's a time now for changing our thought patterns. And thought patterns and mindset is where the change process starts. Okay, so exercise our broader brain, allow more time for imagination, for organizing our thought process in such a way that explores all sorts of possibilities and connections. All right? And in the science sense, you do that again, I said in an earlier discussion, about that's where we create hypotheses that can then be tested in science. But it's much broader than that. It's this broader understanding of the human experience, including the artistic experience and the religious experience, etc., bringing it all to the table. We can open up all sorts of areas of human potential there, but we can't nail down what they are yet. But we do know that where we're stuck at the moment is not working. And we have to know that our time is limited as a species if we don't get to a better place. Okay? So quantum thinking is like a freedom of thought.
Yes.
But it doesn't just happen by relaxing. It's also about recognizing the biases that you carry with you, not intentional, not sinister, but, the limitations of your own thought patterns are already in place.
Yeah.
And it's only by playing with that creative type experience that you can actually learn, because we need experiential data. Now, it's not something you can just think through. You've got to get in the water and swim to understand it.
You see, yes, I think what I'm willing you towards is something tangible for a listener to go, right, okay, this is what I will plug in order to, this is compelling and I'm sold enough to have a go at this quantum thinking. Give me some steps. And actually telling me that the stakes of the human species depend on you doing this, I suddenly go, oh, look at me frozen in, that feels overwhelming. It's
too big,
too big.
Yeah.
But then you come down to this level and you say, oh, play with it.
Yeah.
And just explore different ways of thinking.
It's ironic. We've even put creativity in a box, haven't we? And what I mean by that is, I can imagine a lot of people thinking, "Well, I'm not in a creative role. I'm not a creative, so I don't need to do that." We're all creatives, potentially, and we've got to get over our hang-ups about not being able to play and experience ourselves as human beings.
No, absolutely. I mean, in our line of work, which is essentially getting everyone to understand the nature of play, and we are all inherently playful if we allow ourselves to be. And the idea, life is a creative act. It's a creative project. And, to be in the moment, living it and doing, and as you say as well, just get in and do it. You can't plan through this. You cannot. Yeah, you can't write this down as here we go, I have a full program of works and then I'll send that downriver and hope that Santa Claus gets the letter. No, you have to get in and do it and play in it.
Yeah, you do, because it's only by experiencing it that things like, energetic connection come alive and they become real. whereas they may be difficult to relate to until you've experienced it, like a lot of things. So, experience is another form of information. We need that information built into our brain so we can then start responding to it. And in a practical sense, it means, people getting over their hang-ups about having to be seen in a certain way and actually experience themselves first and last as human beings and not as a job description that's only allowed to do certain things. So that extends our sense of self and who we are and gives us scope for experimentation, which is vital. And we're not saying, organizations are spending every minute of the day, experimenting. Of course not. There's times for experimentation and there are times for execution, in other words, getting things done. But we need to spend more time to explore ourselves and what else we have to give.
There's something lovely as well about the energetic experience of something that it does have to be felt. And it can't necessarily be seen, but it will be felt. And you have to engage in that space in order to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely, because you can't necessarily code or articulate that sort of experience.
Yeah.
But you can feel it, and then it goes into, we've seen it, haven't we? We've seen people come alive in these sorts of sessions where they play around with the idea of who they are, and they really enjoy it. And then they have to go back to work. And it's like, we have to overcome that. It's like, what you've just discovered, how can you take that back into work? So you've got a bigger version of yourself going back into that business space.
Absolutely. And but people's lights literally like dial up. And it's the permission granting of that to be, welcomed in every space.
Yes, absolutely. And the more that's done collectively, the more you learn about each other. We've seen situations, haven't we, where, so-called bosses, are allowed to play and are noticed by other people who then start to see them as human beings.
Yeah.
Rather than just bosses. So there's a payoff here, not only just for, the leaders themselves, but also for the people who relate to the leaders. It goes right through the organizations. And we see first and foremost human beings, not jobs. Yeah. So that's the fundamental of it for me. So so quantum thinking is a change of mindset in a way. We have brains that respond to minds. That's my view. If we create a different mindset, we'll create new neural pathways in the brain, which in terms will give us, it's self-reinforcing. That'll give us a greater capacity to think imaginatively and differently and all that stuff, right? So we engage with that. And then we see where that journey takes us. But it can only be better than what we got, because what we've got, we're not leaving behind. We're just saying it's too limited. And a lot of it's going to be taken over by technology. So this is all about saying, okay, let's go up the value chain now and see what we can bring to the piece that actually will take us to another level of performance.
Yeah.
And part of that is tackling the whole world of the invisible, if you like, of the quantum and the unconscious, and getting more serious about that and not dismissing it because we can't control it.
Yeah, and I've been almost to reframe it, rather than saying it's invisible as if it's like the negative of seeing, it's the felt rather than the seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but we tend to be, we touched on this thing about the difference between sensory perception and sensory deception. And we are led first and foremost by that which we see, whether we see it externally or internally. We tend to believe the stuff that we see, and if we can't see it, we tend not to believe it. But now we have to recognize that's a limitation. It's got us to where we are, and it's very important in an evolutionary sense. But, we only see certain things. There's so much that we can't see. So now we've almost got to think beyond what we can see.
And can you say categorically that the information felt by your body is more aligned with the truth? Like less susceptible to deception?
Well, the word I would use, I prefer the last bit. The comment about truth is tricky, right? Because again, I keep saying there's no independent truth.
We did that.
There's only perception and belief.
Yeah.
Okay. So perception is all about the way that we bring information into our experience, bring mind. So we build all these models that we've talked about, that allow us to capture all this information in a way that's meaningful to us and meaningful quickly. Yeah, so we don't have to keep working it out. So, and a lot of those models are intensely visual, right? But equally then, how we respond to those models is all about belief. So we believe in the models, and we believe in certain things that we need to do in order to interact with our environment, whether we're talking organization or universe. So this play between perception, which forms the basis of belief, which is more about our reactions, that's the way that we deal with the world. Back to your point on, the body, that's part of that cycle. And what I'm saying is the body is definitely honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's honest about its experience, and we have to be aware of the way that we build, an artificial reality in the cognitive space or thinking space of our brains, which may not be the reality that we're trying to deal with. So
it doesn't reflect the truth of the system.
Yeah. So a simple example of that, stop thinking of minds as being something that sit around our heads. To me, the mind is an energetic dimension that sits right across the body. The body is a key player in that, in providing sensory intelligence, which the brain then works on to take to a more sophisticated level of understanding. Again, AI can't do that. It's not embodied. So, it's another differentiator. But the reality is our concept of mind needs to be understood differently now, because there's good argument for saying why it should be partly supported by the technology that we can use.
Yeah.
So another difference is that, okay, we've done everything we can with the thought patterns that have been around for the last couple of 100 years, right? Now it's time to move on. What's the next phase? And that's what we're trying to call quantum thinking, freedom of thought, exploration of thought.
Yeah. Is it the last 200 years in the West or globally? I meing, that is it.
Oh, yeah, I think to be fair, my comment is much more faced towards the West. I mean, there's less of this industrialization of thinking that when you go out towards the East, and they're more in touch, I think, with culture and ancient wisdoms.
And a sense of the collective, strikingly.
Yes, yeah, in particular areas, communities are very strong.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly. So, you're right. Most of my comments, I think, are directed at the West. But, of course, a lot of the East is starting to move into the same thinking patterns. And maybe we can help them to avoid making the same mistakes. So we leap forward rather than crash through the same barriers.
Do we want to talk again about serendipity? To me, it's possibly a kind of consequence of something really that has very significant impact at its root. And I think this is an area that threatens, I see synchronicities or patterns, or, you think of someone and then they call that afternoon, or you dreamt of them, and then what is that relationship? And, does it, is it kooky? Is it entanglement theory in action? Is it, talk to me.
I think it's a bit late in the day to start talking about entanglement theory now in this. I think people's cooked brains probably can't, they will be overcooked if we do any more. But you're right. For people who understand that reference, you are right. But fundamentally the principle is, first of all, there is the psychological element, which is associative thinking. Okay, so as we open our minds up and we force them less into attentional mode, which means we're focused on something in particular, stuff we have to learn or have to do, it frees us up to become more creative. And the basis of creativity is association, where the mind bounces around and just finds natural connections and patterns that emerge. Okay, so one of the explanations for the illustrations you gave, like, somebody coming into your life, etc., can be that we've pieced together a form of thinking, associative thinking at a subconscious level that never came to consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. So to us, it can seem like it's a coincidence, but in fact, it's a result of associative thought, right? So that's one level. But then at the quantum level, there's another level, which is all about, that we touched upon, which is saying, look, if you understand the way that the energy works, the fundamental of the universe is all energy operates on attraction or repulsion, resonance or dissonance. Mm-hmm. And you can see that as you allow your mind and brain to go into a natural form of operation, you open up opportunities for further attraction because you make the brain more available to the information that's spinning around it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So just like in the bloodstream, a blood cell will open up if it senses nutrients in the bloodstream, but it'll close down if it senses toxins. All right? Makes sense. Your mouth's open, so I think that was a good moment in that sense.
Literally a reflexive jaw drop.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So fundamentally, the mind can operate the same way. It can open up when it doesn't feel fearful and forced. It can close down when it does. All right. So we're trying to open up the brain, open up the mind, and get to a position where we can connect with more information that I believe is available to us. Yeah. And it will find its way. And it's coming back to like the commentary we heard earlier on about artists and things like that. And they say they don't really know where it comes from, but it comes from somewhere. And that's why you have to operate in the moment. You can't plan your creative activity. You have to go with it when it's available. And it's always thinking, well, where the hell did that come from? And I don't think the brain explanation is enough. There's something else going on. So my sense of serendipity is very much about that. It's almost like that matrix of energetic connections that we can either be open to or not open to. And the more open we are to it, it will find us. Because all of these coincidences, I think, are just associative connections that come together, but they're not only thought patterns, they give us something. Like the fact that I can't believe the way that these suggestions for books and things appear. And they're nothing to do with algorithms because they weren't things I was looking for, right? And people come into my life just when I'm thinking, I could do it to talk into one of these. And suddenly they appear or reappear. And you sort of think, how can that be? And, it's for me, it's beyond coincidence. And I can't prove that. We're into the world of noetics here, and we won't try and understand that at this stage. But
that's both of us having brought in an idea that we haven't covered in the last episode.
Yes, I know. So we're equal. Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll have to do another one then.
We've twisted our own arms. We'll do another series.
Exactly. But for now, it's part of this concept of we are part of something bigger. And I think that's just one piece of evidence, in inverted commas, that, there's something bigger going on. And we have chosen to ignore it. It's time to stop ignoring it.
Well, you say chosen to ignore it, but then I think about how stressed we are, the sensory overload in our brains, constantly in this kind of threat detection, fight or flight. And our stressed brains are designed to close down and not be receptive to this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so regulating or like down-regulating our nervous systems and getting out of that cortisol spike circuit, rest, reset, moments of joy, that in turn will help us to open our brains. That's something that anyone can actively do as a sort of again, a kind of exploration of this.
Well, the brain is predictive, right? And it's a lovely reinforcement of what we were saying just a short while ago, which is it's back to the cell and how the cell responds to its environment. It's the same principle. It's like if we have brains that are constantly aware of the toxicity of our environment, both emotional and real in the sense of poisons, then they are going to close down to cope with that, okay? If we can build environments where people feel less threatened, e.g. in working environments, they will open up, just like the cell. The rules never change, whether you're talking different species, human beings, the universe. The rules are the same. And what we've started to do now is put that pattern of rules together in a way that includes the invisible and the unconscious and the quantum.
Yeah.
We've got a great responsibility here, to the species. I think this is my final comment because, we acknowledge that we are children of the species that have come before us, but we're also the parents of future generations. So it's up to us to carry on this information seeking and learning that is going to be crucial to the species in the future. And how do we do our bit to contribute to that? Mic drop?
Definitely.
Good point to end, I think.
Yeah, yes. Sorry for ing halfway through.
That's allowed.
As is my way. I'm sure you'll miss them when they're gone. Wonderful. And I think, that is a wrap on Series 1. And if you have enjoyed it, do let us know. We are planning a Series 2, and our broad vision for that is to bring people into our conversations. And we want a really diverse set of points of view, people from different disciplines. So if there is anyone you would love to hear on this podcast, please do drop us names. If you would like to come on the podcast, do also get in touch. And I think the last thing to say is thank you so much for coming with us on this journey. We have loved meandering through this quantum space, and we hope you have too.
Hopefully it makes sense for people and inspires them. So let's see what happens.